Hi, welcome back. Today I'm going to review Chocolat by Joanne Harris. It was written in, I believe, 1998 to much acclaim, and then it became a movie with Johnny Depp, Juliette Binoche, and Alfred Molina, who together as a cast are pretty incredible. Oh, and of course there's the Dame Judi Dench. And that was my introduction to this story, is the movie. I really enjoyed the movie and I watch it pretty much every Lent. So this year I wanted to read the book because I found out that it was a book. So what's it about? Chocolat is the tale of a woman who settles somewhat briefly, perhaps, in Lansquenet-sur-Tarn, which is a small and somewhat insular French town, with her daughter Anouk and her daughter's imaginary friend Pantoufle, a rabbit. This woman, Vianne Rocher, has been for the longest time a traveler, and this experience of being constantly driven to new places by her mother haunts her, as does the death of her mother. And so Vianne is hoping that she might finally settle down in Lansquenet-sur-Tarn. So she opens a chocolate shop in the main square at the beginning of Lent. The main square is dominated by a Catholic church, Saint Jérôme, and so this town would be more used to Lent being a time of sacrifice and fasting, and indeed that's the perspective that our second main character, who's often called the villain, Francis Renaud, the priest, takes. He sees her as an intrusion to their way of life, a threat. The format of the book alternates between these two main characters, Vianne and Francis. Vianne's voice is presented with its own font, so that's how you know when the point of view changes. And it's somewhat like a journal, but for me there was too much dialogue to really feel like it was a journal. Francis's perspective is a flowing monologue when he's talking with the old priest. This old priest is what haunts Francis Renaud, like Vianne's mother, the constant presence of this previous priest who's in a coma in a hospital. It is a spiritual burden to Francis Renaud, and in this I see the two main characters less as hero and villain, as two sides of the same coin. They both have this similar emotional, spiritual burden of some person influencing their life irrevocably, and they've responded in very different ways. Vianne is this heathen, a pagan, and responds with chocolate. Francis responds with the power and authority of the church, and yet they both, in their own way, try to control each other. And it's interesting. Like, I've read a number of reviews and seen a number of booktube reviews, and I feel like I'm a little bit alone in this perspective, or this response. I think this is seen most clearly in Vianne and Francis's treatment of a secondary character, Josephine Muscat. Josephine is a battered wife, essentially, and both Vianne and Francis try to influence Josephine and see the response of Josephine to be indicative of who is right and who is wrong. Both Frances and Vian spend most of the book critiquing everybody. So I disagree with Kate Hodgkinson, who's another booktuber who reviewed Chocolat a while ago. I'll link her below. Who Hodgkinson says that the secondary characters are well developed, but I disagree. I see them only as the battlefield for Vian and Frances. We have Vian's horde of eccentrics and outcasts against Renaud's Bible-toting women and the townies who are too afraid to be eccentric. But most of the characters don't grow. They don't develop. The only one who really has any sort of autonomy is Armande Voisin, the grandmother figure, who knows Frances's past and knows Vian's future. So I guess in that sense, it's for me, Chocolat is not a book about food, and I was expecting more of like a magical realism around the chocolate than I got from the book. In the book, it's much more mechanical and methodical, and it's a means to an end. Yeah. So I see Vian and Frances as very similar characters, and the book, it's not, as a Kirkus review suggests, a book that describes the transformations that overtake the residents. I just don't see that. The residents aren't developing as characters, nor is it, as Publishers Weekly said, a bewitching confectioner who arouses the appetites of the pleasure-starved parishioners. The parishioner, the eccentrics and the outcasts certainly have their own, they have their sins and pleasures before Vian arrives. Even one of the Bible toters has this obsession with image. She's always described as wearing an Hermes scarf, for example. Instead, I see it as an exploration of a coming to terms with oneself, and both Vian's and Frances's coming to terms, both of their struggles resolve spectacularly at the end of Lent, and I think this is why I enjoy it as a text for Lent. It's less a reaction against the church and more a demonstration of the power of both perspectives. There's a New York Times review that I thought was really interesting, in that again, I disagree with most of what Nancy Willard was saying, but I thought that it was important. She drew the distinction that even Vian sees at the end, that she and Renaud balance each other. I think it was a good book. It was very thought-provoking. It was very different from the film. I thought the book was good on its own, and then the film was something different. It was related, but it's like a cousin, not a twin, for example. I think that you would like this book, Chocolat, if you've read things like The Little Paris Bookshop, and that gave you a lot to think about as well. Or if you've read Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. Have you read Chocolat before? If you have, let me know what your thoughts are. Maybe I am all alone in this in this reading, but thank Thanks for sticking around and listening, and I will see you next time.